Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, Travis Hamonic is back. The Sens are bringing the 33-year-old right-shot defenseman on a 2-year contract.
Now with that extension, we're going to take a quick look at just how much room is left for the Ottawa Senators in their cap.
And Cat, how much does Alex DeBrincat's situation have to do with this? And if a player of equal value is not returning, are there any UFAs up front who we'd like to see the Senators bring in? All that's coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 835 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller here in the nation's capital in Ottawa, Ontario. We got to let you know today's episode is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. Today is Wednesday, July 5th, and Pilsy, Travis Hamonic gets a 2-year, $1.1 million cap hit contract. Your thoughts when you saw that yesterday afternoon?
Well, Ross, you were out and I texted you hammer extension. You asked, what's the deal? I told you, and both of us, our immediate replies were, we love it. I mean, like, this is a good extension for a guy that is clearly wants to stay in Ottawa. We talked about how young this D-Core really is with hardly anyone that has major NHL experience. And Travis Hamonic is a guy that can add veteran presence to kind of stabilize all these young guys. Now, it's not like these young guys are all fresh rookies and, they don't have any experience. But you look at 21 years old, 23 years old, 24, 26, and 28. No one was even over 30. So I think it's great to bring back Travis Hamonic, and at a deal, $1.1 million. That's even less, much less actually than we were talking about. We were talking 1.5, 1.3. So to get him at 1.1, I think is a tidy piece of business for Pierre.
Right. Nick Holden, the contract, I think he's kind of replacing in a sense of that 6'7" defenseman who can play minutes, stabilize in a locker room as well. We'll get into what Hamonic brings on the ice, but I think a lot of this extension is what he brings off the ice. How much is made of the lack of accountability? And sure, that stems from the head coach. I would say one of the most accountable people on the team is Travis Hamonic. He's always the guy after losses where it seems like he's the guy speaking to the media. He wore a letter at the end of last season when Thomas Chabot was out as well. There's clear leadership qualities. And if you don't believe it, just listen to him on TSN 1200 yesterday. He had a great interview there. It was always Ottawa, he said. Like, I don't understand how fans are so quick to want to push this guy out. And then it's like, why does no one want to play in Ottawa? This guy he's poured his heart and soul in this team. The hits, the block shots, the shorthanded, like one of the best plays of last season doesn't happen if it wasn't for Travis Hamonic blocking 4 shots in a row. Obviously, I'm talking about the Claude Giroux slap shot goal to put that game away against San Jose. But this guy just bleeds for the team. And I love how he says he and Jake Sanderson text all the time in the summer with the 12-year age gap between them. And it just, you know what? He's checking in on the guys. And I just think leadership cannot be understated when it comes to this contract, because as it stands now, you listed off all the ages. Their oldest defenseman doesn't speak English.
Yeah, or at least Pierre Dorion knows he speaks a little bit of English.
Obviously, yeah. I'm talking about Artem Zub, and his English has come a long way. I'm not putting him down in any sense, but I mean, to be a vocal leader in the locker room, I think Artem Zub would be the first to tell you that's not him. And you have, Shawarma Palace worn a letter on this team. He's clearly a leader at 26 years old, but I just think there's that veteran reliability, that presence that Travis Hamonic has in a locker room and on the ice. Not to mention, This guy had more points than Eric Brandstrom last year. This guy's been able to become a player. What was he, third on the team among defensemen in goals? Like, I think he scored 7 goals last year. So I just think that he's not a negative value when he's on the ice. Maybe he was overplayed in his role last year in terms of 5-on-5, 15 plus minutes a game. I hope it's closer to 11 or 12 and then make up that extra 3.5 minutes on the penalty kill. But man, there's just so much value to be had in a guy at a $1.1 million cap hit.
Yeah, and just for context sake, people that are outraged at the 1.1 million.
I saw someone say that this is the worst offseason in Sens history.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one alone. But this is like when people were outraged that Boro signed a 1.1 million extension. And
with term, right? Didn't he get 3 years on that?
I figured it was 3 or 2, but like either way, the cap hit is very little. And that's when the cap was even less. So to put it into proper perspective, Ross, Travis Hamonic at 1.1 million is taking up 1.3% of the cap.
Or $400,000 less than Matt Murray to not play for the team.
Yeah, exactly. But before we get into more of that, I want to touch on what you talked about off the ice, because I think sometimes fans get lost in the idea that hockey is all about analytics and numbers and cap and everything. And you kind of forget that this isn't a group of 23 statistics working together to have the best Corsi at all times. Like, sure, that's important, but you got to remember, this is a group of people and these are their careers, and you need guys that can fill certain roles. And we just mentioned it. There's not really that veteran presence, and you bring Travis Hamonic in, and he's someone that has a lot of experience. He plays a hard-nosed game. He's one of the leaders in block shots on this team. He's one of the leaders in hits. He's one of the leaders in penalty kill. And you need guys that have that kind of mentality and style of play to support the other guys that are the analytical darlings, that are the younger up-and-coming studs. So I just think that sometimes people forget that there's more that goes on in a hockey team other than just the stats. Like that's something that I think fans kind of lose sight of it. And you alluded to it, like Jake Sanderson, he's a big fan of Travis Hamonic. And you can sit there and be like, oh, well, Hamonic brought him down more than anything, blah, 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 if you want to say that. If Jake Sanderson says he likes playing with Hamonic and it's a benefit for him, I'll take that. It's like the Toronto Blue Jays tweet, Ross, who's your source? Literally us, the Toronto Blue Jays. Like literally Jake Sanderson is the source saying Travis Hamonic provides value to this team. So I'll take his word for it.
Travis Hamonic's played 94 games with the Ottawa Senators, has 24 points and an even rating, which I think is better than most defensemen on this team. He's led them in shorthanded time on ice over that span. Last year had 143 blocks, second most on the team as well. And Pilsy, looking at the schedule here, cool moment alert. Travis Hamonic, 7 games away from 800 in his career. If he plays in the first 6 games, in the next segment, we're going to talk about the D-Core, the cap hit. Is Hamonic the 6 or the 7 guy? It would be on Long Island against the team that drafted him. And we love a good story like that.
We absolutely do. Yeah. And I want to touch on another thing. There was outrage that a player that signed a 2-year, $1.1 million deal was given a no-move clause. People were losing their minds about this. First off, again, this is 1.3% of the cap. It's 2 years.
And next year, it's going to be probably under 1% of the cap.
Exactly. Yeah. So this isn't massive stuff. And I'd like to spin zone it this way. People are like, why are you giving an aging veteran no move clause, blah, blah, blah. Look, Travis Hamonic said in his interview on TSN 1200, it was always Ottawa. He wanted to be here. It's so important for him and his family. I'm going to spin zone the no move clause as a good thing. He's like, look, I want to be in Ottawa so damn bad. I'll take a pay cut. He was making, was it over 3 million?
It was 3 million.
Yeah, he was making 3 mil. So that's a significant pay cut. And he's like, the most important thing to me is to make sure that I'm staying in Ottawa. My family loves it here. It's a perfect spot for us. I connect with the team, the players. Like, I don't know. It blows my mind to think that people are blowing this up so much that it's such a big deal when it's really not. So I'm actually going to take the no move clause part of it as a positive, because how long have we been saying it's tough to keep guys in Ottawa. It's hard to bring free agents to Ottawa. There's one guy that's an RFA right now that isn't exactly stoked to stay in Ottawa, or it seems that way. So to have someone like Travis Hamonic, who's been around, he's been on many different teams throughout his career, emphatically say, this is where I want to be, that's a good thing.
2 players on the Ottawa Senators have full no movement clauses, which means you can't be assigned to Belleville like Nikita Zaitsev was, right? He had a modified no trade clause, but was able to be assigned to Belleville. Who are the 2 players on Ottawa with no movement clauses?
I'm going to say Claude Giroux's the other one.
Claude Giroux's the other one.
It's important for veterans.
It's an important thing
Yeah.
for guys with families. And I know some people, and fair enough, there's a very big difference of NBA and NHL. Just look at the total money being signed in the NBA. But apparently only one guy in the NBA has a full no move clause. One.
I mean, yeah, and the NBA, the trades and
It's just
offseason
different.
is crazy. Yeah.
It's different. I think hockey and everything that's already been the precedent that's set, you can't just kind of pick and choose. I don't know. I don't mind it. I think that it's great that he wants to be in Ottawa. I think that part can't be understated. And I think that it's great to have a veteran presence, a guy over 30 on the back end who doesn't have to play 82 games. How many games will Travis Hamonic play? And what's left with the $9 million that the Senators have to play with still Shane Pinto to sign and the Alex DeBrincat situation to figure out. We'll discuss that, and then we'll get into some remaining UFAs because Vladimir Tarasenko, hand up, on this show yesterday, I took one main reporter who's broken a ton of news, and she said it's all signs pointing that Vladimir Tarasenko is going to Carolina. Now it's 30 hours later and still nothing. Is that connected to Alex DeBrincat? We'll put our tinfoil hats on later in this show. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, and for a good reason. Right off the bat, it's my favorite sportsbook app. The app is simple, safe, secure, easy to use, and if you love baseball season, we're in the thick of it here, I got good news for you. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Math guy, $20, you'll land $200 in bonus bets. Here's the key though, Ross. Win or lose. That's huge. So all on an app that you're going to love. Honestly, compare that app to any other competitor's app, and I think you'll end up choosing FanDuel's app over and over and over. I know I did. There's so much fun things to bet on, and there's many, many different ways to get in on the action. So there's no better place to bet on the MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So go sign up today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
Today's episode is also brought to you by GLEBE Central Pub. Yes, the GLEBE Central Pub is back with Locked On Senators. We are so happy to have GLEBE Central Pub back. You know we love our friends at GLEBE Central Pub. You can find the GLEBE Central Pub right in the heart of the Glebe. They are at 779 Bank Street. I walked by the other day. I was going down to the Red Blacks game, and I noticed that they've got the garage door style. So they open that up, get the flow in there. So I know patio drinks are great, and they do have a little patio set up if you want to grab a bite outside, but sometimes you want to beat the heat. Yesterday with the Humidex here in Ottawa, it was 38 degrees. Yeah. So if you want to beat the heat, get inside, go have a pint or 2 or 3 over at the Glebe Central Pub. It's great food, great people, great drinks, and they always have events. So I'm on their Instagram right now. Every Tuesday is trivia night. Nice. They've got viewing parties for Atletico Ottawa. Yep. Big time soccer vibes in the summer at Glebe Central Pub. $5 tacos every Thursday only at the Glebe Central Pub. Tomorrow, $5 tacos. Make some time for Glebe Central Pub. We love them. They're back. They're the postcast sponsor too for next season. So go support them. Let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. Go visit them at the Glebe Central Pub, right in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street. All right, Pillsy, segment 2 here, Locked On Senators live from Ottawa. Our last live show for a little while.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's so much fun to do it in person and to get a chance to do interviews in person with players, coaches, general managers. So, yeah, it's great to be back in Ottawa and hopefully be back here sooner rather than later. The home opener is, put that in permanent marker. That is happening.
And we have been in touch with our ticket rep with the Ottawa Senators. We are hoping to do something similar. And now that we know the demand, hopefully we don't have to do 200 tickets at a time because they got scooped up like Taylor Swift tickets.
Yeah, I remember us being like, okay, here's the tickets, put the link out, and they're scooped up. And we're like,
hope we can sell them all.
Yeah. And we kept, it was like 3 back and forth emails being like, hey, we need more tickets. Hey, we need more tickets. Hey, we need more tickets. So keep that energy going. And we're going to have a sold out CTC up against the Flyers for sure.
And recall that Claude Giroux scored his 1,000th point in the last home game last year.
Ooh.
So against Philly, great vibes. Like we said with Hamonic, 800th game coming up. Could it be on Long Island? Let's get into that a little bit more here. I'm going to pull up Travis Hamonic's card if you're watching on YouTube, because I think it is worth noting. The numbers are good. Like I that's kind of what's blowing my mind here the most, is that there's nothing here that's egregious at all. 21 points in 75 games. He had more points down the stretch than a lot of defensemen on this team. When they needed someone to step up, it was the hammer. Wadouche, 143 block shots, averaging 3 minutes and 16 seconds on the penalty kill every single game. And you talk about Jake Sanderson and helping him out. Jake Sanderson's the only player with more shorthanded time on ice per game by 1 second. So that was the first pair out on the ice every PK. But Pillsy, I think it's pretty clear he's not playing with Jake Sanderson this year. The Senators D-Core, too deep. Chychrun in the mix, healthy. Shabbat, healthy. Zub, $4.6 million extension. So do you like the fit with Hamonic playing with Erik Brannstrom, which you would got to think is the third pair on paper right now?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think maybe part of the outrage of the Hamonic signing is people jumping to conclusions and being like, oh, DJ Smith's going to put him with Jake Sanderson and he can't be playing in the top 6 or top 4. And that's going to bump Jacob Chychrun down. And people are kind of just unraveling that. I don't see that happening. A big part of the reason why Hamonic was playing so high in the lineup is they didn't have other better options, really. And then when Chychrun came in, sure, he wasn't always a part of the top 4, but he wasn't there that long. And I think we're not going to have that issue. Now, you asked, is Hamonic and Brannstrom a third pair I'm comfortable with? Absolutely. And I'll echo your statements of, I don't understand where people are getting these narratives that he's been bad or there's bad stats or anything like that. And people kind of
and he's objectively funny with the beaver taps.
Yeah, it definitely is hilarious. And people are like, he's a slow veteran. I mean, this guy's like 32, 33 years old. Like, let's not talk about him like he's entering his 40s here just because he's the oldest guy in this D-Core.
Birthday's coming up August 16th. He'll be 33.
Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah. So if you want to get into advanced analytics, Ross, yeah, let's get the calculators out here. But I'm on Natural Stat Trick right now. Great resource if you're looking for advanced analytics. I always use it. And Travis Hamonic and Erik Brannstrom played 57 minutes together, and their Corsi 4 percentage is 61.74. Like,
what's Corsi?
That's you can find that out for yourself. Or do you want me to fully explain it?
Yeah, for the people.
Okay, so you're looking at block shots, missed shots. There's one more.
Shots towards the net. Shot attempts.
That's the one. 4, and then obviously you take that shot attempts, block shots, missed shots against, and you create a percentage there. And so they're sitting at 61.74%. So I really think that that's a great number, and you get your yin and yang pair. Brandy can bring the puck up the ice. Travis Hamonic can keep things shut down and do a good job playing more defensive role. And I think that's a really good third pair there.
Me too. I do too. And you look, they were only on the ice, as you mentioned, for just under 60 minutes, which is the equivalent of a full game. They won that game 5-1. They were on the ice for 5 goals for, 1 against during their 57 minutes of 5-on-5 last season. So I like the fit as well. Brandy loves holding on to the puck, like being able to have it coming out of his own zone and breaking it out. And this is kind of a perfect situation, I think, where he played well with Nick Holden even last year. Brandy's numbers, whichever defenseman he's playing with, are better. So I think that it's a great fit. Now, What does Jacob Bernard-Docker have to do to beat out Travis Hamonic and be in the opening night lineup?
Yeah, that's the real question here. And we've heard from Pierre Dorion, and he's confirmed with us that JBD does have the inside track to be that right-to-hand defenseman on that third pair. It's going to be interesting. And the thing I like about the Hamonic signing too is it doesn't give JBD just a warm, comfy spot there. You got to earn it. And I think that's good because Jacob Bernard-Docker has the qualities to be that guy, but he hasn't knocked the door down and he hasn't forced the Sens. Like if he had, Travis Hamonic probably doesn't get that extension, right? So I think he's going to really have to work on being a good defensive player. He's going to have to work on killing penalties. He's going to have to work on being more physical. I'm talking about JBD here. So he's going to have a really good camp to beat out Hamonic in that spot because this is a guy with a lot of pride, Hamonic. He's a veteran and he wants to be here. He's going to be working hard to keep that spot.
But even still, JBD on a one-way contract, I think they keep 7D throughout the year. You go through guys so consistently, right? It's the NHL. It's a hard schedule. Even just getting guys a rest day here and there wouldn't be the end of the world, but injuries obviously do happen. The Senators know that very well with what's happened the last few years here. I think that the 7 that are up on the screen right now, if you're on YouTube, if not, Shabbat Chikrin, Sanderson Zub, Brandstrom Hamonic, JBD getting in the mix there with Hamonic. That is as good of a Sens D-Core as I can think of in a long, long time. Maybe even before Erik Karlsson, because he wasn't surrounded always with 5 other guys with that much talent. I might even have to go back to the last time it was Phillips, Volchenkov, Red, and Chara. Like that's how solid top to bottom, when healthy, this D-Core is.
This is the best D-Core we've seen in a long time. And I think we put out this graphic on Twitter and it was overwhelming responses. Love this D-Core. Yep. Best D-Core we've had in a while. Good depth, et cetera, et cetera. So
it's like in one breath, they're like, the Hamonic signing sucks. Next breath, wow, this D-Core's really got good depth. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll take, I'll rhyme off a little bit of stats about, let's say Hamonic ends up being the 7th defenseman and JBD does earn that spot, which I'm fine with as well. He's a veteran. He's on a low contract. If he has to spend some time in the press box to get JBD some playing, that's okay. Erik Brandstrom and JBD, similar stats to Travis Hamonic and Erik Brandstrom, 55 minutes played together, but the Corsi 4% is actually a little lower at 51.43, but anything above 50% is pretty decent. So that's another good third pair. And then you've got that top 4 that we just looked at there. And
pen, permanent marker. So what did I say? Hieroglyphics?
Yeah, he said the hieroglyphics. Yeah. So either way, I just think this team is set up for success with the way the back end is, with the way the top 6 is so stacked. And now that you got your goaltending tandem set, I just think they're set up for success. And Ross, what are we even saying? Playoffs are bust?
No excuses.
And they're starting to build a roster that can back that up, in my opinion.
So Jacob Bernard-Docker only averaged 24 seconds per game on the penalty kill last year in his 19 games. And I'm not saying it's putting too much pressure on him to not have Travis Hamonic in the lineup, but get this. Sens leaders in shorthanded ice time last year. We already mentioned Sanderson number 1, Travis Hamonic number 2, Zaitsev number 3, Nick Holden number 4. I'm not saying that that's a good thing, especially with Zaitsev, but you do have to replace those minutes.
Yep.
And I think that not having Travis Hamonic there, all of a sudden, that's a total of over 11 and a half minutes of PK per game that you're missing out on. So Travis Hamonic, welcome back, spends his summers in Winnipeg, and he's got the quad racetrack in his backyard, he was saying. He's got the kids taken care of there, but he's really excited to get back to Ottawa, and we're excited to have him here. And this is not a new take. People should know that we've been on the Travis Hamonic train,
especially you,
for the last little while. I'm excited to see him back and what he can do in a little bit of a more limited role for the Senators. Now, we still have to get to the cap situation, and we're each going to highlight one UFA who we think could be in the mix if this DeBrincat trade is going down sooner rather than later. And I say sooner rather than later because, Pillsy, the way this cap shakes out, there's no room for an $8+ million player. How is it going to work? We'll talk about that next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. All right, Pillsy. Listen to Locked On Senators, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers out there, Monday through Friday. We are Locked On Senators. You can follow us on YouTube, subscribe, please. Road to 6,000, basically there.
Close.
So make it happen. Tell a friend, be a friend. Appreciate that. Follow us on Twitter at Sens Central and Instagram lockedon.senators. If you missed it yesterday, the general manager stopped by live in person, and it's the first of 7 in-person interviews that we are going to get to. The editing takes a little bit longer for that. We've got like 3 camera setup doing all that. Martian's helping out too. So those will trickle out throughout the summer over the next month. But Pilsy, where does the Sens cap situation look right now? Because we have covered this team for 835 episodes, and the cap has never mattered until today. I think might be the first day with now you look at Hamonic, the D-Core set, the goalies are set. How are they going to be able to construct their forward group with what's left?
Well, Ross, the only other time the cap mattered was when the Sens struggled to reach the cap floor.
Yeah, we're like, oh man, remember it was it Tyler Ennis? They brought in, we're like, man, they're like $1 million short of the cap floor. What are we doing?
And then enter Brady. That's Brady Tkachuk's music, new extension.
Yeah,
and it was all good. But as of right now, on Cap Friendly, the Ottawa Senators have a projected cap space of $9,170,000. So, I mean, if you're looking at Alex DeBrincat, that's going to take up a lot of that chunk. I don't know, Ross. At this point, the cat is pretty much gone.
Out of the bag.
Yeah, the cat's out of the bag here. I don't see a world where this works because they still got to get Shane Pinto in here. I think everything, Shane Pinto, Igor Sokolov, these types of RFA deals are kind of hinging and waiting on Alex DeBrincat news. In my opinion, Ross, I think we're at a point now where Alex DeBrincat trade will bring back assets, prospects, picks, that kind of thing that the Senators can use to free up cap space and then use those assets to trade for someone that can fill that top 6 role. That's where I'm kind of the mind thinking. I don't think the Alex DeBrincat trade will directly bring a top 6 forward back.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. I really am. And honestly, starting to look at the way the 23-man roster is constructed here, and just for completeness sake, I will let you know that we have taken Alex DeBrincat out of the projected roster because it's not going to work. But when you look at the spaces that are created when Alex DeBrincat is removed from this lineup, call me crazy. That's okay. I've been called crazy. I've been called crazy before. I think the Sens need a player who can play on the 3rd line more than the 2nd line.
What?
Yeah. Call me crazy.
That is crazy. Who's going to play on the 2nd line if you only get a 3rd line?
That's where, okay. So the 2nd line, hypothetically, is Josh Norris at center and Drake Batherson at right wing.
I wouldn't even say hypothetically. I would say that's locked in.
I just see the way that both the Florida Panthers and Vegas Golden Knights were constructed, where they had duos, and the 3rd player on the line can be the supporting player.
Okay.
And maybe a player who isn't a 2nd line player. Maybe that's one of the prospects that Pierre Dorion was talking to us about, because he mentioned 5 guys by name. Could Ridley Gregg be a 2nd line left winger and play that complementary role? Could Roby Arventi? Could Igor Sokolov? Those are the types of players I think you put with 2 established players that have chemistry. And then you worry about like Pinto and Joseph, I think, might need someone more than Norris and Batherson. That's where I'm coming from here, where they might need that extra push.
No, that's a fair point. And that kind of lends to the narrative I've been pushing, that the Sens don't need a top 6 guy. They need a 5-6 guy. So you're saying even a 7-8 guy could play on that top or that 2nd line. And then you get like a driver on the 3rd line. A driver on the 3rd line, or at least a guy who can distribute the puck a little bit more. We know Pinto's a shoot first center. I mean, Thomas Tatar just would be so perfect. I don't think he's coming here, but he would be perfect in terms of a guy who makes players around him better. I think Pinto being a shoot first center and worrying about the defensive responsibility, I think it's a lot to ask for him to control the pace of play in the offensive zone at this point. And Joseph, he's a speed burner, but I also worry about maybe the offensive hockey putting
sense.
Any pucks in the net.
Yes, exactly. So if you're watching on YouTube as well, we've pulled up this 23-man roster, and that 4th line wing position that can be filled, I think, internally.
We already have a leading candidate for that one.
Boko
Boko
Imama.
Imama.
Let's go. Now, if that's going to be a full-time gig for him, or if that's something that's going to be a bit of a revolving door with maybe a Cole Reinhardt, who's Pierre Dorion brought up, and David Bell brought up as a guy he wants to see take another step forward next year. Could that be a guy who gets games this season, or are we going to see the Senators, if they aren't bringing back Alex DeBrincat-Pilsy, that opens up the door here for maybe they get 2 players at $3 million contracts, because Shane Pinto is the only RFA left to sign internally outside of Alex DeBrincat, who's in a different category for me right now. I don't know. I see the D-Core. It looks great. I see the goaltending. There's questions for sure around Korpisalo up to last year, but I'm confident. Like,
positive sandwich for Korpisalo.
Yes. I saw you make a sandwich, by the way, yesterday. It was bottom bun first. I saw it. I called you out on it.
Got it figured out.
But
now.
like, am I crazy to say that? Because with $9.2 million right now, let's earmark 2 for Shane Pinto. Is that fair? 2?
Sure. That's probably on. I don't know, actually.
I'm not.
Depends on the term, but
yeah.
Sure,
well,
let's say 2.
They've discussed 1 to 8 year deals.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
With Shane Pinto. So that really is the X factor. Like, here's what I'll ask.
Okay.
Do you think Shane Pinto's deal comes in before or after the Alex DeBrincat trade?
99.9% sure it will come in after.
Yeah. It would kind of be nice to have that roster assurance beforehand. Like, knowing what your cap is at.
Yeah.
Going into next. I'm sure Dorian has a pretty good idea with the agent, though.
Oh, yeah.
So, man.
Now,
how many players need to be added to this? There's 3 open spots for us, plus the 13th, 14th forward, which, again, how many of those can be filled internally out of, if it is a 23-man roster? And again, I think Ottawa more likely to just have 1 extra forward, 1 extra defenseman. That's what they carried a lot of last season. We'll call it the Gambrell spot or the Kastlick spot for a lot of last season. Like, how many of these need to be filled externally?
I think I'll work backwards. 1 spot needs to be filled internally. I'll say that for sure, right? Because you need a ELC or a low contract that can not bust the bank cap wise. And then I think you need, we'll call it a middle 6 forward externally. I don't think, you mentioned Ridley Gregg, Roby Yarventi, Igor Sokolov as a guy that could play on that second line. I'm not sure.
Crooker?
I love that. No,
Crooker could be that fourth line winger.
That's the thing. I don't think he's ready for that. Can he get to a place where he's ready for that? Absolutely. I think he has the potential, but I don't think where the Senators are trying to go next year that would be fair to put him in that position.
For sure. He was just the other guy that Pierre Dorion mentioned to us as a guy who could make the team out of camp.
Yep, absolutely. That's fair. So I really think that you need to, whether it's free agent or trade, and I'll snap it back to you if you have free agents you want to plug in here, because I've got a different frame of mind that I'm going to go with. But I'll final answer: 1 spot internally and 2 spots externally.
I was going to go 2 spots internally, 1 spot externally.
Okay.
And the guy who I have my eye on, and maybe this is just me kind of buying into the hype, but I'm seeing 1-year deals all over the place. I think a lot of people, and this is why I'm honestly not really blaming DeBrincat that much, because he's never asked for a trade. He's never done this or that. It's always been he wants to cash in next summer, no matter what.
Yep.
Now, at 31 years old, if Vladimir Tarasenko were to take a 1-year contract, that could be a good replacement.
Yep, definitely. The thing with Tarasenko, though, is there's some major injury concerns as of late. And if you're kind of relying on him to fill in the points that Alex DeBrincat did, you're taking a risk. And anytime you sign any free agent other than Claude Giroux, you're taking a risk.
Other than Claude Giroux. I mean, I told you already, though, Thomas Tatar would actually, I'd prefer him to Tarasenko.
Agreed.
I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten a deal yet. But
I think he's one of those players, Ross, that is going to be waiting for the landscape to kind of settle and teams to fully figure out their cap before he ends up signing a deal personally.
Fair. Okay. So those are the 2 names that I want to throw out there mostly, but how about you?
So I'm not looking at, obviously we've talked about Tatar was one of the top guys on my list. I agree. I think that's a good option in free agency, but I mentioned, I think the DeBrincat deal is not going to bring back a top 6 guy, because like, it just doesn't really make sense. How many teams are going to want to swap a top 6 guy for a top 6 guy unless
There's a very interesting one though. RFA for RFA. We're hearing Anaheim's in talks.
Okay.
Or at least have made an offer that would be decent.
Who's coming
Troy
back?
Terry.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
I've no knowledge about it. Just RFA for RFA. We've seen that happen before, where it's like, hey, both guys give him a fresh start.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if Troy Terry really needs a fresh start. The guy was unreal the last couple of years on a bad team.
The only thing is, Ross, it's similar to the D-Core. There's a lot of youth on that top 6. I wouldn't mind getting someone with a little more.
And he's honestly probably too
veteran
expensive. We just
experience.
said only $9.2 million. I really think they need to focus on a $3 million forward to replace Alex DeBrincat, which is a lot to ask. And you're really getting Josh Norris to replace DeBrincat in terms of money.
And that's what I said. You got the Josh Norris clause, right? Josh Norris hopefully fills in the production. So I think they're going to use assets to acquire a player. Guys I'm looking at is Connor Garland. That's a perfect third.
That's trade though.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm not looking at going the free agent route to replace this. I'm looking at trades because you want guys with term. And Connor Garland is sitting at $4.95 million for 3 years. He doesn't have any sort of no move, no trade clause. Vancouver, I think, is dealing with some cap issues here. They're pretty close up to it. So that's a guy I would be targeting, and I think they would be interested in picking up future assets. And then another guy, and we've talked a lot about this, Ross, that I'm very interested in, and he's someone that I've wanted for a while, Travis Konechny.
Yeah. What's the deal on him?
He's got $5.5 million for 2 years now. He can play either sides of the wing, so that would more be your second line winger replacement.
Oh, definitely.
But then you're looking at these guys. Let's call it around $5 million. Garland just under, Konechny $500,000 over. Now you've got $3-4 million to play with. You can easily get Pinto in there and have a little space left over to sign a veteran 4th line guy, or even, another 3rd line guy.
Or save it for Brass when he makes a team out of camp after his comeback.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So that's the mindset I'm going with. And I think that those are attainable things. And like Travis Konechny, that's a guy I'm sure the Flyers are kind of dangling out there. They're doing a full fire sale right now. So those are 2 kind of options and routes that I would look at to try to replace Alex DeBrincat.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let us know in the comments who you would replace Alex DeBrincat with. And are you hoping to get an NHL, like make an NHL trade, as they say, like the, Line for Dubois comes to mind, a few others where it's like, hey, you're both getting different needs, but you're both getting NHL players? Or would you be happy at this point to try to get one of those UFAs that I mentioned, Tarasenko, or even a Thomas Tatar? Or would you be willing to even flip the assets you get, if they are future assets, to a Philadelphia for Travis Konechny?
Well, and the thing, I just want to touch on one more before we wrap up here. The thing is, if you're going to go the free agent route, Ross, you're going to have to pay them a little bit more than their value. And you're probably going to have to tack on a year or 2 more than you'd like, right? Like that's how free agency goes these days, unless players are doing 1-year deals where they're like, okay, I'm going to have a big year, like the Taylor Hall, Buffalo type deal. I'm going to have 1 year. I'm going to play really well, up my value, or get traded, and I'll move on from there. So I just think that the proper way to get, true, more appropriate value is to have guys that are already signed, and you don't have to have the free agency bump that they're probably going to get in term and AAV.
Yeah, no, very fair. It's going to be interesting to see, but one thing's for sure, the Sens D-Core is set. I'm confident in it. Pilsy is, but do you have any concerns? Let us know that in the comments as well. Pilsy, final thoughts on today's show?
Final thoughts for me is thank you for welcoming me back home, Ottawa. I love being here. It's awesome in the summer. I got to drive back home, back to the chicken farm for me, Ross. So it's been a lovely, lovely visit to our nation's capital.
Always love having you, buddy. Final
Absolutely.
thoughts from me. Happy birthday to the man who made me a Sens fan. It's my old man's birthday today, so we're gonna have a barbecue tonight and celebrate that. Then I'm back to Winnipeg. We'll have a show tomorrow. I'll be doing it from here. Pilsy will be back in Collingwood, and then it's time to release the David Bell interview, which is absolutely sick. I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. So stay tuned for that and more. Make sure you're following the show on social media, lockedon.senators on Instagram, and Send Central on Twitter. And subscribe. Be a friend, tell a friend, subscribe on YouTube. Help us get to 6,000. We appreciate that so much. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.